Beneath the fields of central China lies an army. Thousands of life-sized warriors made of clay standing in silent ranks exactly where they were buried. Each soldier has a different face. They were built to guard a single man for all eternity. The first emperor of China. And at the center of it all lies his tomb. A vast buried mound that, to this day, no one has dared to open. This is the story of the Terracotta Army. Welcome to Curio Hour, where we uncover the strange, the unsolved, and the unforgettable. Today's story: the Terracotta Army. Our story begins not with an emperor, but with farmers. In the spring of 1974, in a dry region of central China, a group of local farmers set out to dig a well. The area had been hit by drought and they needed water. So they chose a spot and began to dig down through the earth. As they dug deeper, their tools struck something hard. They began to pull up pieces of fired clay, and then something that stopped them cold. A clay human head. The farmers were unsettled. They had no idea they had just punched through the roof of one of the greatest archaeological treasures in human history. Archaeologists were called in, and as they began to excavate, the scale of what lay beneath the field slowly, astonishingly, revealed itself. It was not a single statue or a handful. It was an army, rank upon rank of life-sized clay soldiers, buried in great pits, standing in military formation. To understand why this vast clay army existed, we have to meet the man it was made to serve. One of the most powerful and ruthless figures in all of history. His name was Qin Shi Huang. He was the first emperor of a unified China, and his ambition shaped a civilization that endures to this day. Before him, China was not one country, but a collection of warring states, locked in centuries of brutal conflict. Through war and conquest, the king of the state of Qin defeated his rivals one by one, and around 221 years before the Common Era, he unified them all under his rule. He declared himself the first emperor and set about transforming his new empire with staggering force and vision. He standardized the riding, the money, and even the width of cart axles. He built roads and canals and connected early walls into the beginnings of what would become the Great Wall of China. But the first emperor was also a tyrant. His reforms came at a terrible human cost, with vast numbers of laborers worked to death on his great projects. And he was consumed by one great obsession: a terror of death and a desperate desire to live forever. He sent expeditions to find a mythical elixir of immortality. He took potions that may have contained mercury in the belief they would extend his life. And he prepared on a colossal scale for the afterlife. Because if he could not be immortal in this world, he would rule in the next. And so he commanded the building of an enormous tomb complex, guarded by an entire army. The Terracotta Army was that guard. A force of clay soldiers built to protect the emperor in the afterlife, just as a real army had protected him in life. And the numbers are breathtaking. Archaeologists estimate there are around 8,000 soldiers in total, buried across several great pits. But it is not just infantry. There are also some 670 clay horses and over 130 war chariots, a complete imperial army in clay. The soldiers are arranged for battle in proper military formation. There are armored infantry, archers, cavalry, charioteers, and officers, each in their correct place. The main pit alone holds thousands of warriors, lined up in long corridors facing east, ready to defend their emperor against any threat from beyond. Originally, the warriors were not the muted gray we see today. They were painted in vivid colors, with bright reds, greens, blues, and purples, an army that once blazed with life. Tragically, much of that paint flaked away within moments of being exposed to the dry air after 2,000 years underground, a challenge that still shapes how the site is excavated. The soldiers carried real bronze weapons. Swords, spears, and crossbows, many still sharp after 20 centuries, some treated with a coating that preserved them remarkably. But the most astonishing thing about the Terracotta Army is the detail. Because every single soldier is unique. No two faces are exactly alike. Each warrior has his own features, his own expression. Different eyes, noses, mouths, and hairstyles, as if modeled on real, individual men. Their hair and beards are carefully styled. Their armor is rendered in fine detail, down to the individual studs and the knots in the cords binding the plates. Even the soles of their shoes are textured. The level of craftsmanship, repeated across thousands of figures, is almost beyond belief. The figures were made using an early form of mass production. Bodies, arms, heads, and hands were made separately in molds, then assembled and individually customized. Skilled artisans then added the unique faces and fine details by hand, before the figures were fired in great kilns and painted. It was an industrial effort of incredible sophistication. Building the entire complex is thought to have taken hundreds of thousands of workers, laboring for decades. A staggering investment, all for one man's journey into eternity. And yet, as incredible as the Terracotta Army is, it is only the outer guard. It is not the tomb itself. The emperor lies elsewhere, in a place no one has entered. About a mile from the army stands a great mound, covered in earth and trees. It looks almost like a natural hill, but beneath it lies the actual tomb of the first emperor. This burial mound has never been excavated. The emperor's tomb chamber, sealed over 2,000 years ago, remains closed, its secrets locked inside. But we have a tantalizing description of what may lie within, written by a Chinese historian about a century after the emperor's death. According to this account, the tomb is a vast underground palace. Its ceiling is set with pearls and gems to represent the stars and the heavens above. And below, on the floor, a map of the empire was laid out, with its great rivers and seas recreated in flowing liquid mercury, made to move mechanically forever. For a long time, this sounded like legend. But then scientists tested the soil of the Great Mound and made a startling discovery. The earth above the tomb contains unusually high levels of mercury, far above what occurs naturally. The ancient account of mercury rivers may be literally true. The historian also wrote that the tomb was protected by deadly traps, including crossbows rigged to fire automatically at any intruder who dared to break in. So why, after all these years, has the tomb never been opened? The answer is a mix of danger, respect, and the limits of our technology. First, there is the mercury. The chamber may be filled with toxic vapors, making it deadly to enter without extraordinary precautions. Second, and most importantly, there is preservation. Archaeologists remember how the painted warriors faded the moment they met the air. They fear that opening the tomb now would destroy its treasures forever. The decision, wisely, has been to wait. To leave the tomb sealed until science advances enough to open it without harming whatever lies inside. Some treasures are best left to the future. And so the first emperor lies undisturbed, exactly as he was laid to rest over 2,000 years ago in his palace of stars and mercury beneath the quiet hill. Outside, his clay army stands eternal guard, just as he commanded. Thousands of unique faces, frozen in silent vigilance, defending an emperor in death as in life. The Terracotta Army is a window into the mind of a man who would not accept death and who poured the wealth of an empire into the hope of ruling forever. An army of clay, a sealed palace of mercury and stars, and an emperor still waiting in the dark for an eternity that, in a strange way, he has actually achieved. The Terracotta Army,